I see intuition as your inner wisdom inside. It's the gut feeling that you have sometimes that you pay attention to or don't pay attention to. And then you regret it because you said, oh, like Doug said the other day, my intuition said to do this, but I didn't pay any attention. And he paid the price for not paying attention. So ultimately, all of this is about returning you to be in touch with the inner wisdom inside. And not listening to your brain. Your brain only generates thoughts. In fact, if you have done any kind of meditation, you know how much your brain talks. Think, think, think. And usually, when you meet a problem, immediately you think, how can I fix this? What's this about? Using your brain. And the ultimate point of today is for you to consider that your heart knows better than your brain knows, because all your brain can do is tear things apart, be logical. It doesn't have the whole picture or a whole answer, but your heart does. And the more you connect with your heart, you are connecting to your intuition. And the more you connect with your intuition, you are guided by an inner wisdom. And that's what today is all about, to help you remove the barriers to your heart so you can have your intuition and your inner wisdom working on your behalf. So let me begin by sharing my slides. Let's see, what shall I do here? Well, I'll put this down here. All right. Welcome to day 2, Ignite the Power of Anger, so you can live with balance, clarity, and purpose. Like yesterday, we want to create a safe place, connecting you to your body, yourself, and connecting to those of us here. And unlike yesterday, I'm going to ask you to put in the chat. Doug, you saw that, right? Perfect. Welcome, Allison. We just began. And we began by talking about creating a safe place so that we can be in the spirit of connection with your community, your intuition, and your heart. So we'll admit Mary. Welcome, Mary. We are just beginning the process of creating a safe place. So please put in the chat what is most sacred to you right now, what pops into your mind, put in the chat so we can share what keeps us in touch with the sacred, what makes us feel safe. And Doug, you're going to have to read to me because I don't have access to the chat.
Danny says, home, being inside my home. Gloria says, my grand blessings.
Uh-huh.
And says, balance. And I'm going to say the Tao right now.
Okay, a Tao.
the Tao.
All right. I am going to say the magic of miracles because I see Meister Eckhart's quotation. The theme of today is to get the tools you need to start an expanded path journey. He says, and suddenly you know it's time to start something new and trust the magic of beginnings. And I like this. Suddenly you know, because earlier, before we officially began, I talked about knowing. There is a brain kind of knowing, a science kind of knowing, where you know the facts. You have all that information. But there is a kind of knowing that your heart knows. Like, as I said, intuition. Your intuition says, ah, I know something that someone didn't tell me, that it just kind of came out of nowhere, but it actually came from you. And that is a capacity, intuition, or your knowing, that I hope you will have keys to learn how to expand as we go through this segment today. Having created a sacred place. Okay, you all know my bio, so I'm not going to repeat it. Ah, but just in case, no, anyone who would listen in would have heard day one. So I'm not going to repeat my bio, but I want to tell you another real story behind the surface. And since I don't remember exactly what I said last time, let me say this. When I was 7 or 8, I was looking up at the sky and I was asking God, where are you? I was in a home, a Shinto Buddhist home. And if you know anything about these practices, there is no God. So, where I had the idea, the thought, where are you, God, is curious. That's one thing I wanted to say. And I was there because I was lost and confused by something that happened with the neighbor boy more than one time, where I felt like a victim. I felt almost paralyzed to do anything about what he was doing. And that certainly sealed my being lost, confused, and looking for God as someone who would have the answers or someone that would provide me protection and care. Now we'll fast forward to a time where I was in intermediate school, and a group of my so-called friends confronted me after school and told me that I was mistreating my best friend, who was friend to us all. And so they prevented me from making contact with her. But after school, they put me on trial and found me guilty of this crime. I'm mentioning this because I didn't respond in anger. I was being bullied, but I wasn't angry because I already squashed all those feelings. And you know what helped me further to not be bothered by that is I was in a Christian group, and I thought that we're supposed to forgive people. And so I was in this forgiveness space and just let it not bother me. This I see later as a way that people on a spiritual path can dismiss what are important, distressing messages from their heart, or or how people hurt them and they can forgive them and be okay about it without realizing that they adult may be okay, but the inner child, because it's a repetition of a childhood wound, is hurt. But I'm getting ahead of my story. And then the story ends 10 years ago when intuition, my voice of God, said to me, listen to the cries of your heart, which led me on this journey to heal my heart. And again, to say, learn map when I was in the middle of a challenge. So now, with the healing of my heart and all that I've learned and the power of the mat treatment, I feel connected to my intuition, connected to the wisdom of my heart. And we'll talk more about that. So I am hoping that I'm so connected to my inner wisdom that whatever I need to say, how I need to say, will be prompted and all the words will come out of my mouth so they'll be exactly what you need to hear. All right, here is a review from day 1, 24 hours ago. You had the experience of exploring how you learned about anger growing up, what happened in your home, what happened among your peers. Then you had the opportunity to check in how you were affected by these experiences, whether it was to say, I'm not going to ever be angry like that and hurt people, or suppressing your anger, bottling it up, however it was. You did the best you could. And you had a chance to explore how you presently respond to anger. And then I put up a number of patterns that, excuse me, you could have adopted because of how you were dealing with anger. And we ended with the consequences of these patterns so that you only live a half life, so to speak. Now I need to look at my notes because I'm sure I forgot something. Ah, yes. Before we begin this, say yes in the chat if in the last 24 hours you've seen anger in your life in a different way. For example, when you got angry in the last day, could you feel how it felt to you? Or if you were angry, how it felt to you? Yes in the chat if you felt some difference.
We have 3 yeses from Gloria, Allison, and Danny.
Good. Thank you. Did you notice how you react to your anger or another's? Yes? Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
I too noticed how I had responded to anger differently. In the last 24 hours, my partner, Doug, got angry at me because I was doing something that really irritated him. And I could feel what happened to my body as a consequence of that anger. It kind of felt like an internal shudder. And then My response to that was to be angry and say something defensive. So, what I learned about that was that anger gets you into this tug of war of two things. I would want things my way. And if it isn't your way, you might get angry. Or you're interfering with somebody's wanting it their way. Then it becomes a struggle. I'm right. I'm right. And there you are in conflict. Anger created because you needed your way and you're right. How many of you can own up to either of these? To notice when you're angry or someone else's, you are saying, I need it my way. Any yes in the chat?
There's 4 yeses.
Excellent, thank you. And how many of you um, can feel when someone is angry at you, or if you're angry, that you can feel that energy of um, wanting to push, wanting to strike back? Welcome. We have just started by a review of yesterday, and I'm asking people to notice, see if you notice something different about your anger in an incident. You'll have an opportunity to look at an angry incident recently in an exercise that is coming up. All right. This is where we begin what I call your emotional reset segment. Most of you realize that education does not include emotions, not in the family, not in school. I have not really, even in being in psychology and as an undergraduate and as a graduate student, I don't think we ever talked about emotions. Now, isn't that crazy? Because when people are in therapy, they have so much feelings of distress and all of that. And we were never talked about what do you do about your feelings or your client's feelings. So, in all levels of emotions are not regarded as an important, essential topic. And that's why Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, is sort of a rare piece because he talks about emotional intelligence in a way that you need to understand your emotions and be with your emotions to the degree that you can be with other people's emotions and have compassion. So that's kind of the broad scope that we're going to touch upon. And because we don't have emotional education, we react as our parent did, we model, or we react in the opposite way, not wanting to be anything like them. So you might become a vocal or a silent rebel. I didn't discover my being a rebel until way in my adult life. Or you might react by withdrawing emotionally or freezing, have your PTSD system engage, fight, flight, or freeze. Or spontaneously you would shout or yell, or you might hit someone Like the dog that irritates you. You didn't know you were irritated by something, but you kicked the dog. I find myself, when I haven't quite acknowledged my anger, that I'm yelling or shouting. So put a yes in the chat if you have yelled, shouted, or struck out in anger. Will anyone admit to doing any of those things?
We
Yeah.
have a large number of yeses.
Yes. Okay. Now, when you did what you did, withdraw, yell, shout, any of those things, how did you react to that? Your reaction. When I yelled or shouted, I it informed me, oh, I'm angry. It informed me. Before then, I didn't know. So when you responded in the way that you did you know you were angry? Say yes in the chat if you knew you were angry, or deduce that you were angry. We'll explore all this shortly. Thank you.
There's some, yeah, there's a yes, I don't know, and I say no, it was just a reflex.
Right, okay.
Somebody stepped on my toe and I just reflexly,
Right, you were angry and you just responded. No, reacted. Reacted. Okay. Somewhere along the line, we came to the conclusion that anger is bad because it's uncomfortable, because angry people hurt others. Anger feels aggressive and we don't like it. Yesterday, we looked at patterns you develop when you want to avoid anger. You use suppression, bury it so you don't notice that you're angry. Or you avoid any situation where anger might erupt because there's disagreement. Or you might adopt people-pleasing patterns where you're making sure that everyone's happy, their needs are being met, so that no one's going to be angry. Or you might have noticed that in any situation, you end up blaming yourself if anything is going wrong, so that you don't have to be angry for somebody who stepped out of the line or messed things up. You think, oh, I was responsible, I could have done this, etc. You move into self-blame. Or you become overly accommodating. Whatever you want, whatever you want. When you're that way with people, accommodating their needs, you don't run into trouble, do you? More patterns to avoid anger. You numb out, you shut down, you become a perfectionist. Perfectionist meaning that you drive yourself very hard in any of these patterns to do the right thing. To not make mistakes so people get upset. Perfectionism has a long list of what it does to you. And then the passive aggressiveness, where you don't realize that your anger is leaking out. So you remember these patterns, yes?
yes, I'd like to add something.
Oh, yes.
In the past, when I was angry, I would numb out by drinking, smoking excessively. Um, so there's the numbing out can sometimes be, uh, or substance use could be a way of numbing out.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. Numbing out is dulling or actually distracting yourself into by an activity that will not have you be with the anger. I have a client whom I'm going to discuss later on that when she's had enough of all the agony she's dealing with, she watches TV, distracts. People play video games to distract themselves from their distress and negative feelings. People go shopping. Um, Whatever that becomes a way of moving away from yourself. So thank you for that, Doug. Now, this is a transition where we talk about the first anger. The first anger happened from my place when a parent wasn't there when you needed comfort, nurturance. And the example is a crying baby in a crib being neglected because the parents are busy. The baby is hungry, the baby is wet, the baby needs comfort, but nobody comes. So the baby is screaming until they're exhausted and they fall into giving up, possibly. But they were angry at first because someone wasn't there. No one came. So rather than respond, no, not respond, I want to make a distinction between reacting and responding. Reacting is just, it just comes out of us. Responding is more conscious. You can react and then you can look at it and then make a response. That's different. So we begin to talk about looking at anger in a different way so that how you've been habitually reacting, you can begin to inform a different way of being with your anger. Can you see? If you can see that anger is your heart saying no, please say yes in the chat. If you can see that anger comes because your needs are being ignored, write a yes in the chat.
We have yeses to both questions.
Will you consider that by listening to your heart, you can begin to hear that the no are about your needs being ignored so that you are now aligned with your heart? Say yes in the chat if you can, if that makes sense to you. Wonderful. Thank you. So, what is anger? It's saying no about needs for safety, respect, understanding, and love not being met. Safety, respect, understanding, and love. When the baby is crying, they don't feel safe because no one's there. They want someone to understand and respond with respect to their needs. But most of all, they want to feel the connection of love. So, this is one way of beginning to inform you about what anger is about. It's about your needs. So, the connection is we're going to talk about the inner child. When a parent wasn't there when you needed comfort, nurturance, etc., no one came and you were hurt. So now, before we move any further, I want you to take a recent incident when you were angry. Can you remember a recent time when you were angry? What happened? Review it in your mind. How did the situation or person present itself that got you angry? Instead of what you got, what did you need? So be curious about that situation, about your heart's no. So we're going to take a minute or two for this exercise and see where we are. And as I will turn on my timer. All right. Now's the time that I would like you to share, if you're willing, what you saw when you were angry, what went on for you. Either to raise your hand digitally or actually, or write in the chat.
Re- Danny raised her hand, so I'd like Danny to unmute.
First, you had to leave the scene. Would you unmute yourself, Danny?
Sorry, I had to turn my kitchen fan off.
Okay, what happened for you?
Um, so last weekend I went against my better judgment and I was committed to working a charity event with this woman who I met in another course a couple years ago. Um, I usually only see her at like practice sessions. Anyway, um, I last year around Christmas I was working on this campaign and she hadn't worked in charity yet. Anyway, this is way too long of a story. Who cares? Okay, so she asked if I was available for April for this last Saturday over the message, and I said yes, assuming it was kind of the same things. But I was frustrated because I like to know everything that's going on, all the details. I like to be organized and be part of what's going on. And every event, I just get there and then I just, oh, do this. Like I'm not a part of anything. And that's not why I would have stayed with the other campaign then, if that's what I was going to do. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, I'm not getting really experience to be getting my own nonprofit going. Like this was the whole point. She knows that. So then but I say, okay, yeah, I'm available. And then and I said, well, I can't be getting vendors and things without any information, because I've been trying to get together for coffee and nothing. So then she tells me it's $50. So then I'm like, I have to pay to volunteer. Like I thought, so I didn't respond right away. I waited 36 hours because I didn't want to respond in anger, especially to this person, because, well, I know her from a spiritual group. So, anyway, I didn't hear any response for 2 weeks. And I noticed on the WhatsApp, like I could always tell when she'd read, but I thought, okay, maybe I'm in my head. I kept dismissing everything. All of these things I kept dismissing. And so when it came time, I think she was expecting me not to go and say I have other arrangements. I know that's what it was in my heart, I feel. And when I said, okay, I'll be there at 5:30. So I picked her up. The energy was off. It was very strange. And I drove us there, didn't really talk. And when I got there, my job, there was she had basically replaced me and didn't tell me. And didn't, so then it was awkward. And then, like, this was a Persian event. My friend's Chinese, and I'm taking Chinese. And then I don't know if she did it to bother me, but then her Persian friend just started speaking Chinese to each other the whole time. Like they can all speak English. So I don't know if it was to like bother me because I wasn't that ahead in Chinese yet. So anyway, she didn't speak to me the whole time. And then I was there. And so then I was getting really upset. And my friend who wasn't ill was in town. And I didn't know because it was the last minute. He's been very ill. And I was getting angry at myself because I'm like, why am I here? Why am I here for this person that clearly doesn't respect me or care when, like, I have this friend who's not well, I may never see again, So I got really angry. And when she was like, okay, well, we don't need everyone here. We can, like, now we can go eat. And then there was supposed to be a performance, or there was a performance after. I didn't stay. I just said, okay, I'm going to go actually. And she's like, oh, what do you mean? And I said, no, I just came to help. And one of my duties, I just left because I was so angry. And then I got in the car and I just bawled my eyes out the whole way home. And I haven't talked to her since.
Thank you.
That was a really long version. Sorry.
No, no, in your version, you spoke about putting up with a lot. None of what you needed came through. You were not treated in a way that made you feel valued or seen or understood. And then to top it off, you got mad at yourself for getting into this. And so there was so much anger about your needs not being met. You're not possibly listening to your intuition that says, this isn't working out for me. I like things this way. I should just walk away from this. So there's just a lot of anger to me. And thank you for sharing that. Does that hit at all what I'm describing as a summary of your
Yeah.
situation? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I think it was just my ego, and I knew ahead of time. I even knew ahead of time. I'm like, don't let my ego get in the way and just show up because I don't want to look like someone who doesn't honor their commitments. And because I knew this was going to happen, I'm starting to learn myself. So that's why I was so angry at myself because I know myself. I'm already hot. Someone says something to me. And it's
Okay. All right. Yeah.
thanks.
So I appreciate you're sharing all of that. And before we move on to the next point, did you each, if in just a sentence, what did you learn in doing that experience? Allison, Mary, and somebody else who I can't see, Doug, is there something that you learned about your needs in terms of the anger experience you reviewed? Anyone writing? Anyone going to say? I'm going to move on.
I was beginning to say that I learned that I needed in a situation where I was angry just to not be alone.
Do not?
Be alone.
Oh, okay.
And all I needed was to have companionship, even though I couldn't change the situation that made me angry. I just needed the comfort of another person.
Thank you. As we will move into the segment about inner children, that when the painful experience happened, when the parent didn't come through, one of the first impressions that sunk into the child, I am alone. There is nobody here. And being so young without resources and being alone, it is very scary. You need comfort. So that is all included in what Doug shared. So let me go back to sharing to get my orientation and write in the chat if you have. All right, so we have this recent incident. I'm looking at my notes for once to make sure I'm not surprised with what comes out. Okay. Now, for those of us who suppress or try to bury or deny our anger, we can look for subtle signs of anger. So when I asked you to do this exercise, you may have tried to find something where you could really feel the anger. And when you've learned to dampen or hide from anger, it shows up in terms of frustration. Don't you say sometimes, oh, this makes me so frustrated. You don't say, this makes me so angry. Or this person disappointed me. Rather than saying, I'm angry because this person did this. Or irritated or annoyed. Or when you judge, you are angry because you're making that person separate from you and you're criticizing them. Or when you're jealous, you're angry that somebody has something you want and don't have. So there is anger. Resentment and bitterness are stored anger where you didn't deal with it. It may have arisen again and again, and you're bitter about it. You're resentful. You don't acknowledge that you have this store of anger that is brooding. Another subtle sign of anger is withdrawing. It's, I think Danny may have said something in what she described as a withdrawal from the situation. That might be one way of her expressing her anger. Or yelling. That's how I know I'm angry. That's pretty obvious. Or when you criticize others, you're making yourself better than, above them, and putting them down. You're kind of, in criticizing, putting them apart and I was going to say judging them. So it's back to feeling separate, better than, and ultimately you'll get to see that that criticism comes from an inner critical voice that acts on you as well. When you brood, what are you brooding? You're contemplating, think about something that is bothering you, that you're probably angry about. Complaining and blaming are clear signs of anger that we often don't recognize. When you're complaining, you're not getting what you want. You're angry, but you don't think you're angry, you're just complaining. Or you're blaming, same thing. You blame yourself, you don't realize you're angry at yourself. You blame others, you don't realize you're angry. So, when you work on anger, it's really helpful to know that there are many ways in which you can become aware of your anger.
And could you comment on the link between depression and anger?
Yep, I certainly will. Depression, I wrote a post on this. Depression is, remember I talked about yesterday about when we try not to deal with anger and we bury it, we are putting a damper pedal on anger, pushing it down. There are two things that happen. The energy of anger you lose because you're distancing yourself from it. So when you begin to connect with your anger, you are getting the energy of that, which opens up choices for you to act. That's one thing. The damper pedal affects all emotions. So you don't experience joy, delight, happiness because you've got a damper pedal in your emotional system that takes away any positive motivation. So you're depressed. And when you're not doing anything and feeling this lack of energy, you think you're depressed. You don't have any motivation, so you don't do anything. So that state also cuts you off from any experience that is going to change things. That's why the cognitive behavioral steps to dealing with depression is action. They want you to take action because action at least brings in a different experience that begins to shake things up. Did that make sense to you as an example? Okay. Next. So to review, the inner child's, to review, the inner child is triggered when they are angry, sad, or afraid. And they're angry because of rejection, betrayal, abandonment, abuse, or neglect. And when the adult is feeling anger, it is often because it's reflecting what happened in the past. If you have healed this wound from your childhood, it might touch you, but your anger would go. You might feel angry and you can let it go. But if you haven't healed it, it punctures that, and now you've got a pussy wound to deal with. So current frustration touch on past wounds, and that's when your trigger of anger, comes from an inner child that was hurt early on. And when you work with the inner child, you find that unhealed anger leads to, such a familiar list, people-pleasing, perfectionism, overworking to gain approval, chronic exhaustion, depression, resentment, or loss of purpose, which is kind of like a confused, depressed state, or feeling stuck and unable to move forward in personal and career growth. So this is why looking at the inner child becomes vital in terms of anger. Harriet Lerner said, anger is a signal and one worth listening to. At this point in the game, say a yes in the chat if this has gotten your attention, that anger is an important signal that you are willing to listen to. Say yes in the chat. I saw one yes, two yeses. Okay, thank you. So the reset involves notice your anger, be curious. Anger is a message of no from your heart. So you be with your anger and listen for the message of no from your heart to learn what it needs. Rather than responding unconscious, you can notice and be curious. And rather than using your brain to figure out, you can ally with your heart instead and hear how your heart has been hurt. So this is where we pushed. Doug has actually said what the unmet need and the past wound was behind his recent anger. He heard, I need someone. I don't want to be alone. I like this quote. Anger is the roar of your heart saying, I matter. So now we come to what do you do if you know you have inner child that is angry sometimes? How do you work with your inner child? How can you dissolve the patterns from your inability to say or act on your no? Like some of the patterns that Danny spoke about. How can she not get caught up in those patterns so she can know what she needs and act from that and not put up with, etc.? How do you heal your inner child? So I'm going to do a quick process where I will, for a minute and a half, quickly lead you through a process of being with an inner child. So please close your eyes and begin paying attention to your breath. Because when you focus on your breathing, the next breath is deeper. You can feel your abdomen expanding more, bringing more vital oxygen needed by every cell of your body. And as you continue to breathe, your body brings in relaxation and your mind a bit of quiet. So in this space of being disconnected to your thinking mind in an active way, you are in the space of imagination. I see the space of imagination as a dark, endless space, like being in looking up at the sky without stars, just dark. And I want you to meet a young version of yourself, maybe 3 years old, but any number from 1 to 5, whatever pops up. Or if you've been aware of a particular inner child, envision him or her. What's on What's his hair like? What's the child dressed like? What's on their feet? The expression on the face, the sense of the child, whether they are upset, and it's usually something dark that has brought the child here. Maybe for Doug, one of the times that the child felt alone. So gradually make yourself visible to this young child and introduce yourself as you're the adult from the future coming to be with the child. And then have a dialogue that is something like this. I'm here because you feel so alone. I'm here because you don't feel good, you hurt. And you were hurt because somebody did something to you or they neglected you. And I want you to know that none of that is your fault, and you are not to blame. You are innocent, pure, and good. I want to be with you. If you feel hurt, sad, angry, or afraid, I want you to feel not alone. And eventually ask, what can I do for you? So I'll leave you in this space for a bit more, and then I will move on. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but begin to withdraw from this situation, telling your child, I'll be back. Let me know when you need me. Give me signs. And you can use this recording to duplicate this process for yourself. So please return and share in a short sentence how that was for you. Did you connect? How did the child respond? How did it feel for you? A word or two, please.
Danny says encouraging.
Well, I hope it was a positive, hopeful experience for you, that there is a way of using the imaginal space, which is not a conscious space. So in terms of healing your inner child, there are many methods out there, journals, meditations, and so forth. But to me, they're not effective unless it disengages you from your conscious process. So all the affirmations in the world that aren't really effective in healing your inner child.
Nanny said, it felt sad for me to know My inner child was neglected, but the conversation is a glimmer of hope of change. Mary
Wonderful.
said it was helpful. Allison said it allowed me to be present with facing myself. And what I found it helpful was it allowed me to defend myself in a situation in my childhood where I got blamed for something and I didn't have the language skills to defend myself or, yeah. Anyway,
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, now I want to talk to you about the power of the subconscious and map make anything possible. In my work that I do with clients and students, map is a very, very important part of it. The brief explanation is your conscious mind is like the tip of the iceberg, and your subconscious mind is under the water. Right now, it's wonderful that your conscious mind is able to take in what you're able to take in, but the subconscious mind is influencing each moment about what is and how you're being affected. In your subconscious mind are all the painful experience you try to forget or have forgotten. All in your subconscious mind are the limited beliefs, the strategies that we talked about. They're all there, all your habits. The subconscious mind is wonderful because it keeps your body going, your heart beating, your lungs breathing, and so forth. But in terms of emotionality, it informs us in a way that is dark. And so the capacity to use your subconscious mind on your behalf is really a huge gift, which I was given 5 years ago when I studied MAP, Make Anything Possible. In this system, I train a person's subconscious to become a healer. And when the subconscious becomes a healing part of them, we call that superconscious. So when I work with clients and we discuss the different trauma parts and patterns and beliefs, at the end I can say, superconscious, please treat all of the parts, the trauma parts that we touched on, all the memories, all the thoughts that went with them, all the patterns that we detected, do a massive change history and everything after that. So just like going back to a place of imagination and giving your child a different experience, superconscious is able to change your history so that you can release all of that, release the sources of all that contribute to your distress, limitations, and so forth. So I love what I can do with MAP. Here is a place that you can put in one word or a short phrase on what so far you have gotten from our time together. An insight, a perspective, something. I'd appreciate that.
and I posted the Calendly uh, link for booking a discovery call. You may want to talk about that.
I have slides coming up, Doug. In fact, there are quite a few slides I have to share, so I'm going to go over time. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Nanny. Very good. Thank you, Danny. Thank you. I will tell you more about the healing power of the subconscious. So I am going to go on. I appreciate what you shared. I wanted to tell you Sally's story as short as I can make it. I worked with Sally for quite a while. She was a successful professional social media expert in an international children's education company. She was so good, she was in demand. And because she was responsible, she tried to meet every demand. At home, she was a sole breadwinner because her husband had been unemployed for 3 years and was depressed. And she had 3 teenagers who were active and well, but also needed her attention. In the time that I worked with her, Sally became so sick she was in bed for 4 weeks with pneumonia. And in the middle of that, because one of her side gigs was being an executive producer, she went there for 2 weeks to do her job, obviously prolonging her recovery. In the middle of the work with her, she said, I need self-compassion. That gave me the clue that she finally turned it around to look at her needs and how she had been ignoring herself and needed to be with herself compassionately. In this time, she talked about another side gig, a coaching that she had taken, certified in, and only did a little bit. And she said, when I work with my clients, I make it makes my heart sing. And she's not in that company. And I see her on Instagram with her coaching and producing reels to show what she can do, doing the work that made her heart sing. This is all work done with the subconscious. Real quickly, a story about Rosie and the anger. Rosie had been abused since the age of 3, and it was never acknowledged by her family and parents, and that happened for years. So when COVID came, she fell into a black hole and entered a dark night of the soul. She has been dealing with all this trapped trauma in her body. Recently, like in the last week, she began to say things like, I have put up with, I have tried to do this, and so forth. All the programming of people pleasing and taking care of other people's needs and not her own. And she is so wise. She knew what to be done, but she held back and let others take charge or move ahead. And now she's saying, no, I'm not doing that. I am not going anywhere if anyone is in that territory. So she is finally gaining strength in her no. I want to introduce to you my Inner Child Healing 10-week course that meets weekly and ends with a group map session. So we explore issues and leave 15 minutes where we do a map session, and people can have their trauma parts treated. I just received word from a person participating in a group now who says that in the 2 weeks between all the treatments she's received, she's in such a different place in terms of her options and feeling freed from a situation that her sick sister, narcissistic with Parkinson's, had kept her trapped. And this is about working in a group. Brene Brown, to love ourselves and support each other in the process of becoming real is perhaps the greatest single act of daring greatly. It takes courage to do that. This is a recommendation from one who took the course. Changed my life, giving me clarity, grace when healing my inner child, and permission to dig deep with spirit, and provides a space that makes you feel heard and safe. Thank you, EC. Here,
When I first started working with Anne, I was in a super dark and fragile place. I was having super bad anxiety, very serious panic attacks. I was in the emergency room a lot. And I really felt like my world was sort of crumbling, just sort of collapsing in on me. I was going through like super painful breakup. I had major issues at work. And I think more than anything, I just felt extremely alone. I had been through a lot to get to that point. I had spent years of hiding my grief and fear, and I think I buried everything so deeply that I pretty much assumed that I didn't have feelings. I buried it so far I thought it disappeared, but it hadn't. And I feel like working with Anne, she met me with compassion. She met me without judgment. And I think she met me with a presence that made me feel safe enough to enroll in the class to begin with. And when I enrolled in that class, I found other people who were feeling very similar to how I felt. And I think that it was that group of people that made me sort of be able to come into myself, to really start to examine why I was feeling the way I was. And so over the course of the class, I felt like I grew a lot. My growth wasn't done at the end of the class, but I felt like this was a great starting point for me. Having gone through the class, having worked with Anne, I am calmer. I haven't had a panic attack in a year and a half or almost 2 years now. I'm more centered. I am more compassionate with myself. I talk to myself very differently, and I'm just really, really thankful for the class that I took with Anne, just because I think it opened me up and it allowed me to become who I really was versus being afraid and being terrified. And so I feel like that was what I got out of the class. Working together with others who were in similar situations as I was really made the difference for me.
thank you. Now, I have a whole series of slides that goes through the 10 weeks of what is involved. But since I don't have the time, I'm going to skip through them really quickly. Module 1 is about awareness. It's about turning on the light on different areas of your life to see what is there so you can change. Come on, slides. Module 2, we focus on triggers of the inner child. And we talk about this whole emotional reset that we were talking about in terms of anger. And learn how to look at our emotional reactions in a different way. Module 3, all the beliefs of the inner child that limit the adult coming from childhood wounds and move to more empowering ones. Module 4, the strategies that you saw, identifying perfectionism, self-reliance, overachieving, people-pleasing, and so forth, all that we can find to heal them, the source of them, so that instead of being caught in these patterns, we have spontaneity and creativity instead. Then we have the module on the power of the unconscious, subconscious, as I said. But because we have a group map session at the end from the very first, we train everyone's subconscious to become super conscious. So we have this healer on our side every week. Here is one of my, how do I say, more evolved students. With Anne's guidance, I coaxed my inner child out of hiding, helping her feel safe and release fears and defenses. Now I know I deserve to take up space and hold space, which has helped me better understand boundaries. Today, I feel more like the tall redwood tree I sit under, with a stronger connection to the God of my heart, grounding me and letting my soul speak. J.H. was able to leave a 25-year-old marriage with a narcissist during this time because she finally found her courage and strength and the truth of what she needed. So, Module 6 deals with belief like I am alone. And you already heard people meeting that, and we deal with that fully. Module 7, belief that I am not good enough. This belief reflects in so many areas of life, so that it's important to heal the wound of not being deserving, worthy, lovable. Now, Module 8, people pleasing. We know about that. 9, the strategy of perfectionism, all the ways it's reflected in your life, and how to heal the wounds so you can release the pressure of having to perform, do, always be better. And so you can relax and be who you truly are and be fine. Module 10 is to encourage you to work with the genie, the superconscious in your pocket, learning how to call on the superconscious to show up in your life when you need healing from the distress you're experiencing. Anger is a tool for change when it challenges us to become more of who we are. And that's what this is all about, helping you become more of who you are. The special price for this 10-week Inner Child Healing course, 10 weeks, is $9.97, one-time payment, $5.97, 2-month payment monthly, or $125 weekly. This includes the weekly group sessions, weekly assignments with feedback, and a private Facebook community where you can support, ask questions, etc., and discounted one-on-one sessions. Now, as a bonus for signing up in 24 hours, you get a full one-on-one map session. And your payment will contribute to a scholarship fund to balance with others who cannot pay that much. So I want you to work in that flexibility. You get a free PDF copy of Listen to the Cries of Your Heart, and you'll get an inner child healing recording like I presented today, only thing longer, and then a specialized subliminal treatment, because I can create tapes where the message of the subconscious treatment goes straight into your subconscious that you can play at any time and treat yourself that way. But, okay, here's the but that I should spend a lot of time, but I don't have. I spoke about how so early in life we're hurt and we feel we're alone, we feel unsafe, we have so many fears. And therefore, looking at a choice like this that I presented, fears that come up, not even conscious, are you worth this? To invest this? to invest this time. So I want to address that is part of what happens. But fear is generated by your brain, your practical brain that is analyzing, trying to figure things out practically and so forth. And here, I encourage you to notice that. Notice the self-doubt or the doubt of whether this is worth it for you. And rather, turn to your heart. Turn to your inner wisdom as much as you can. Turn to the little voice that said, sign up for this 2-day presentation because there's something of value here. And I think you've all acknowledged that that voice was correct. You did get something of value here. So listen to that wisdom in your heart to gain the courage to step into this place of change. Your soul. Listen to your soul. Listen to your inner child. They are waiting. Last wisdom quote. Your heart knows the direction. Run in that direction. Thank you, Rumi. This is a screen that shows you how to schedule a discovery session, which Doug has already put in the chat. So you can copy it, paste it somewhere, and schedule a discovery session with me for any questions. If you're interested, but you have some doubts, let's talk about it. If you're interested, but you can't afford the whole thing, we'll come up with solutions. I started this whole 2-day presentation, especially encouraged by how much you shared yesterday with the thought of, wow, maybe we'll get a class of enough of the participants joining, and we already know each other a bit from the interactions here. If you want to join the course immediately, copy the top one where you will find the pricing that I had for you. It's healyourheart.thinkific.com courses, Inner Child Healing. You can email me from the many emails I sent you for any of this, your questions, for the links. I'd be very, very happy to hear from you. So I end 15 minutes overtime to thank you, to show you what the process, the inner child connection is. And then the last one is for you to duplicate this. It's hugging yourself. Can you now put your arms around yourself and just feel what it's like to embrace yourself? Thank you for hanging in with me.